The sinister rules we follow at our isolated Arctic outpost for the haunting nights. Lisa shivered as the wind howled outside the outpost, a relentless wail that mirrored the tempest brewing in her mind. She had traded her suburban Ohio life for this desolate Arctic hell, lured by the promise of steady pay. Now, thousands of miles away from her daughter, she felt the weight of the isolation pressing down like the snow that piled against the door. It had started well enough. The crew welcomed her with open arms, their laughter echoing against the stark white walls. Dr. McCarthy, their charming yet unsettling leader, had a way of making everything feel safe. But soon, the laughter quieted and whispers took their place. "Stick to the rules," McCarthy had said, his eyes dark, "and you'll be fine. Break them, and the darkness will consume you." His rules seemed simple. Don't go outside alone after dark, lock the doors before sleeping, and never speak of the storm. Yet, as Lisa lay awake that first night, dreading the darkness that cloaked her, the air thickened. A flickering light drew her attention. She crept from her room, heart hammering in her chest. She half expected to find someone else awake, sharing her struggle with the night. Instead, she found her colleagues gathered in hushed, frantic tones. They fell silent as she approached. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice just above a whisper. They exchanged furtive glances, and a chill shot through her. "Just talking about the weather," one of them stammered, but Lisa saw the fear etched on their faces. That wasn't fear of the freezing temperatures outside. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Days passed, but the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing hour. The storm raged outside, but inside, the tension spiraled. Lights flickered like dying stars, and someone's belongings kept disappearing, only to reappear in the strangest places. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something lurked just beneath the snow, waiting. The disappearance of one researcher crushed the fragile camaraderie left among them. No one spoke of it openly, but the glances exchanged were thick with terror. Lisa knew she had to make a choice: adhere to McCarthy's rules, or risk uncovering the truth behind the madness that enveloped them. One night, as thunder rolled and the lights dimmed, Lisa peered out the frost-encrusted window. What she saw sent a jolt through her. A shadow flitted across the white landscape, moving with unnatural speed. Stomach churning, she faced the gang. "We're not alone. Something is out there." But before she could voice the dread that clawed at her throat, the howling winds drowned her words. A chill seeped into her bones as she absorbed the despair in her colleagues' eyes. The darkness whispered its secrets as the storm drew closer, its breath brushing just out of sight. In that moment, Lisa understood. The malevolence wasn't just outside, it was inside too. Whatever sinister force lurked beyond the snowbound walls of the outpost was finding its way in. Each rule now felt like shackles, binding her to a fate she could barely comprehend. With desperation clawing at her heart, she braced for what would come next. Would she be able to survive this twisted game, or would the storm claim her as one of its own? The blizzard raged on, a relentless beast shaking the walls of the outpost. Lisa couldn't sleep, even as exhaustion gnawed at her bones. Sounds seemed to carry through the storm, eerie whispers that twisted around her thoughts. They spoke her name in the wind, taunting her, drawing her into the icy darkness that loomed just outside. She glanced around the cramped room she shared with her colleague, Mark. He lay restless, fitfully mumbling in response to dreams clawing at him. Something tightened in her chest. The weight of isolation wrapped around her like the heavy layers of winter gear they wore. It was suffocating, but it was more than that. There was something in the hush after each gust of wind, a heartbeat of silence that weighed heavily. Gathering her courage, she slipped from the bed and padded quietly to the door. The hallway stretched like a dark tunnel before her, shadows stretching under the dim emergency lights. The walls felt alive, whispering secrets too chilling to hear. With a slight tremor, she grabbed the handle and twisted it. It was locked, just as McCarthy had insisted. But tonight, Lisa felt reckless. She unlatched the doorway and stepped into the corridor. The air was cooler here, a stark contrast to the warm, stagnant atmosphere of the shared room. Her breath fogged before her, mingling with her unease. As she crept toward the common area, she heard hushed voices spinning around her like the wind outside. Every step felt like a violation of the unspoken rules. "Do you believe it's him?" A voice, hardly above a whisper, slipped through the cracks. "Shh, they'll hear you. You can't say that," another voice responded, sharper, tinged with panic. Heart racing, she pushed forward, drawn to the glow of yellowish light seeping beneath the door. What were they hiding? Curiosity gnawed at her, tearing away at her sense of caution. She pressed her ear against the cold wood, straining to catch the words that drifted through. "We should leave. We'll lose our minds in here," a quivering voice said. Silence followed, a silence thick enough to choke on. And then, there it was, the unmistakable sound of a distant wailing, not from the storm, but from the depths of the station. It was haunting, a cry that sent shivers down her spine. She pushed away from the door, blood rushing in her ears, and stumbled back down the hallway. The shadows danced, bending at the corners of her vision, as if alive. She entered her room, body trembling. Mark tossed in his sleep, oblivious to the chaos brewing around them. She felt a sudden rush of anger. How could he be so unaware? But before she could sink into despair, something caught her attention. An eerie visage flickered past the frosted window, moving with a peculiar grace against the blizzard's roar. No, she was being paranoid. It was only the blizzard. And yet, dread gripped her heart, squeezing tighter as she approached the window. The outside was a blur, blurry white masses whipped around crazily. But there it was again, a figure, darker than the abyss outside. She stumbled back, the world tilting around her. A deafening crash echoed through the air. The lights flickered, then died, plunging everything into darkness. Panic thrust her heart into a wild rhythm as she fumbled through the dark, trying to find the switch, something, anything, to bring back a semblance of safety. "Liz?" Mark's voice cut through the blackness, and she could hear the tremor in his words. "What's going on?" "Something's out there. I heard." Her voice fell off in a whisper, swallowed by the darkness. But before she could articulate her thoughts, a chilling laugh rippled through the air, echoing off the walls like an unsettled spirit. Each note pierced through her skin, igniting a primal instinct to run. What had she stirred? What dark thing lingered just beyond the safety of their walls? Suddenly, the door burst open, and there stood McCarthy, eyes wide, more feral than she had ever seen. "Get back! They're here!" Lisa felt the cold creep beneath her skin like a tangible, crawling dread. She realized then the rules had shifted once more, and the night held horrors she had yet to fathom. Would she make it through the night, or would the malevolence finally break through the false security they had clung to? As the shadows edged closer, she knew one thing for certain. The storm had just begun to reveal its true nature. McCarthy's shout faded away, swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Lisa felt her chest constrict, the air thick with a tension she could almost touch. Mark blinked, face slack with confusion, the reality of their situation slowly filtering in. "Get down!" McCarthy barked, eyes darting around as if searching for unseen threats lurking in the shadows. The urgency in his voice jolted Lisa into action. She dove behind the nearest piece of furniture, pulling Mark along with her. Outside, the howling wind intensified, cascading white sheets of snow against the fragile walls of the outpost. "What the hell is happening?" Mark whispered, voice trembling. "Shh," Lisa hissed, trying to suppress the fear clawing at her throat. "We have to stay quiet." But of what? What could they possibly hide from? The laughter had sent chills down her spine, and she could still hear its reverberations echoing in her mind, mingling with the phantom wails still echoing from the darkness. Suddenly, a loud bang erupted from the hall, followed by what sounded like shuffling feet. McCarthy's silhouette crouched near the door, tension pouring off him like steam from the vents in their heating system. "Listen, I need you both to hear me," he said, voice lowered but frantic. "Whatever is out there, it knows we're here. We must stay together." Lisa swallowed hard, biting back the urge to scream as she bit on her tongue, her nails digging into her palms. McCarthy's usual bravado had vanished, leaving behind a shell of the man she had once considered unwavering. What had changed? "Why won't anyone tell us what's going on?" Mark's voice broke the suffocating silence. "You can't just say things like that." "Just trust me," McCarthy snapped, and for an instant something flickered across his face. Fear. "You need to understand. The storm, it brings more than just cold." Lisa's breath hitched. What could be worse than the relentless wind and snow? The air around her became suffocating, pressing down like the weight of their isolation. Then, as if conjured by her anxiety, a shadow slid across the room. It was quick, almost a flicker, dancing in the corners of her vision. She saw it. She knew she wasn't imagining it. "Something's coming," she whispered, barely able to voice the dread tightening her throat. McCarthy whipped his head around, searching the darkness as if expecting it to materialize at any second. "We need to barricade the door," he urged. With shaking hands, Lisa and Mark scrambled to push their beds against the entry. Amid their hasty movements, the sinister laughter returned, echoing, wrapping around them like a venomous vine. It dripped with malice, teasing, drawing them in closer, as if ready to feast on their very fears. "Why is it laughing?" Lisa's voice trembled as they settled behind their makeshift barricade. "I don't know, but it isn't friendly," McCarthy said, eyes wide, scanning every inch of the room, as if the laughter could take solid form and attack. The wind howled, high and angry, and then faltered. For a brief second, there was something like silence. It was wrong. An unnatural hush amidst the raging storm outside. Every heartbeat pounded in Lisa's ears. The walls felt like they were closing in, pressing deeper. Weird flickering candlelight began to appear beneath the door, casting grotesque shadows up the walls. "There's something outside," Mark murmured, his eyes glazed with fear. "What if it finds a way in?" "What if it's already inside?" McCarthy whispered, staring wide-eyed at the door. And there, the solution began to edge toward them, recognition breaking through, sudden and cruel. Lisa's mind raced. "The whispers! Can't you hear them?" "I hear only that damned laughter," McCarthy yelled, his voice cracking. And in that moment, the laughter stopped. The sudden stillness was worse than the chaos. As Lisa's breath caught in her throat, the door shuddered violently, rattling against their barricade. The shadows danced, beckoning and sinister, as they all realized the storm wasn't the enemy. It had been the very thing they had ignored all this time. Then the lights flickered back to life, revealing the twisted scene before them. McCarthy dropped his head, eyes wide and hollow. When they gazed back towards the door, something slinked through the cracks of the threshold, humbling them with the weight of its presence. They weren't alone anymore. What would they do now? Have they crossed a point of no return? The door shuddered again, rattling the barricade with a force that stole the breath from Lisa's lungs. Mark's eyes widened, and McCarthy's grip on the edge of the bed tightened, knuckles blanched white. The flickering candlelight grew stronger beneath the door, morphing shadows into grotesque shapes that crawled across the walls. "What is that?" Mark croaked, the sound barely breaking the silence. "Shut up," McCarthy snapped, but he was too late. The laughter had returned, waves of dark mirth pulsing through the cold air. It wasn't just laughter. It twisted and turned like a living thing, wrapping itself around their minds, sowing seeds of panic deep in their hearts. Lisa's chest tightened with fear. Each ragged breath became a reminder of her fleeting safety. She barely dared to blink, her vision honed on the door, praying that it wouldn't give way. Suddenly, the laughter ceased, broken by a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the floor. A dark shape slid beneath their makeshift barricade, curling its way closer, seeking them like a predator with its prey. The walls felt alive, bending toward them, hungry. Just stay calm," McCarthy murmured, though his voice trembled, catching the tremors of fear he fought to suppress. "We need a plan." "A plan?" Mark's voice rose, rife with disbelief. "What plan? There's something in here with us." Lisa could feel the weight of it. The chill in the air intensified, seeping into her bones. She could see her breath forming clouds in front of her, a tangible representation of their fear. She had to fight against it, against the overwhelming feeling that their fate was already sealed. "Listen," McCarthy pressed a finger to his lips, forcing them into silence. For a moment, the only sound was the steady thrum of their heartbeats, pounding wildly in their chests. Then, a soft scratching echoed from the door. It was measured, deliberate, not random, not just the wind. The shape beneath the door began to elongate, slipping slowly down the threshold. More shadows joined it, curling and coiling like smoke, drifting into the room with a sinister grace. "Get ready to fight," McCarthy said, gripping a nearby chair leg like a club as he turned to face the door. "Whatever comes through, we hit it hard." "What if it's not something we can fight?" Lisa whispered, the dread wrapping around her throat like a vice. The shadows writhed, consuming the dim light, willing themselves into the room. Heart racing, Lisa realized they weren't just darkness. They whispered her name, weaving promises she dared not understand. The temperature plunged even further, filling her lungs with frost. She fought the urge to scream as the sharp edges of her fear began puncturing her resolve. She glanced at Mark. His lips moved, murmuring something, but the words were lost in the terrifying soundscape around them. As he began to tremble, urgency surged through her. They had to do something. And then, without warning, the door exploded open, splintering the wood as a figure dashed inside. It was a wretched form, limbs twisted and elongated, its eyes glowing like embers in a dying fire. The laughter morphed into a horrible crescendo, a cacophony of madness. Lisa gasped, scrambling backward as the creature loomed, palpable darkness spilling into their sanctuary, filling every crevice. The whispers intensified, calling to them, the shadows beckoning with sinister allure. "McCarthy, now!" Lisa shouted, but he was frozen, captivated by the horror before him. The entity surged forward, hungry and relentless. Just when they thought it couldn't get worse, an anguished scream shattered the air, a sound that echoed through the storm and chilled them to the bone. And then everything stopped. They were engulfed in darkness, the creature gone, and silence wrapping around them thickly. What was that? Met with empty space now, dread pooled in Lisa's stomach. It felt like the eye of a storm, eerie calm wrapping around them. "Did it leave?" Mark asked, breathlessly hopeful. "Or is it waiting?" McCarthy whispered, his eyes darting toward the shadows clustered in the room. Lisa knew they weren't safe. The storm still raged outside, but more importantly, the darkness inside was alive and hungry. She stared into the void, desperate to grasp the horrifying truth. And deep down, she feared that whatever they faced hadn't even begun to show its true nature. Would they become prey to this nightmare, or could they find a way to confront it head-on? The companionship of dread settled heavily in the air as a new whisper brushed against her ear, soft but distinct. "You will not escape." What awaited them next was far darker than the shadows could betray. The silence felt alive, pulsating with an unnerving energy. Lisa's heart drummed a frantic tempo in her ears, drowning out the howling wind outside. McCarthy shifted, eyes wide as he tried to make sense of their impossible situation. Shadows danced around them, whispering secrets she dared not hear. "What happened to it?" Mark's voice quaked, a fragile thread in the oppressive air. "I don't know," McCarthy replied, fingers gripping the chair leg like a lifeline. "But we can't just sit here. It might come back." Before she could respond, an icy blast swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering candle. Darkness swallowed them whole, the air thick with uncertainty. Only the beating of their hearts broke the stillness, a grim reminder of their vulnerability. "McCarthy?" Lisa whispered into the void, her voice trembling. "Do you think it's gone?" "Is anything ever gone when it comes to this place?" he muttered, the hint of panic cracking his resolve. "We're just prolonging the inevitable." As if to answer him, a low, mocking hiss slithered through the air, radiating from the shadows. Lisa's breath quickened, the whispering grew louder, merging into incomprehensible chants that felt weighty with history. Shivers cascaded down her spine. "Stay quiet," McCarthy hissed, straining to listen. The shadows seemed to close in around them, as if they were aware of their fear, feeding on it. Each rustle made them flinch, each distant sound magnified. "Can't we barricade the door again?" Mark suggested, his voice more frantic now. "What if it... No, when it comes back?" "No, we might trap ourselves," McCarthy replied sharply, eyes darting around. "We need to find a way out of this mess first." "But what if the thing is just..." Lisa began, but she cut herself off. Her mind raced with thoughts of the creature's twisted form, its ember-like eyes searing into her. A flicker of movement caught her eye. To her horror, she saw the shadows morphing into a different shape. A hand. Long and distorted, fingers stretched unnaturally, reaching for them. "Look out!" Mark shouted, panic erupting in his voice as he backed away, pressing against the wall. McCarthy took a step forward, brandishing the chair leg. "Get back!" he yelled, but the shadow hand simply twitched, as if toying with them. It floated above the ground, untethered, mocking their fear. Lisa felt a surge of courage. "We can't let it play with us." She took a breath, summoning her resolve, and shouted, "What do you want from us?" The hand twitched, the shadows around it thickening, as the eerie laughter returned, echoing in their ears like a haunting melody. The air groaned, pressing down on them. "See?" McCarthy gritted his teeth, stepping closer to Lisa and Mark. "It thrives on our fear. We need to challenge it." What if it isn't afraid? Mark said, his eyes darting wildly around the room, always searching. They stood at the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss of their own terror. The shadows writhed and twisted, taunting them, tantalizingly close to spilling into the realm of reality. "Enough of this!" McCarthy yelled, thrusting the chair leg toward the dark shape, but it merely absorbed the motion, dissolving into an even deeper darkness. Suddenly, the whispers grew chaotic, drowning McCarthy's last words. They crashed over Lisa like waves, drowning her in a torrent of despair. She stumbled back, heart racing, as the shadows closed in even more. Could it sense her weakness? Then it happened. A voice broke through, distinct and chilling. "Survive this night, and you might find the truth." The shadows recoiled, swirling violently. A light flickered in the distance, illuminating a path shrouded in darkness. "This way," Lisa called out, urging them toward the glimmer. But as they hesitated, uncertain of what awaited them, the laughter surged again, growing louder and more ominous. What lay beyond the flickering light? A chance for escape, or a deeper descent into madness? As they moved, one thought hammered in Lisa's mind. They were not alone in the darkness, and whatever hunted them was drawing closer. They stepped into the flickering light, drawn by an instinct that screamed for survival. Lisa could almost feel the shadows retreating behind them, recoiling from the warmth of the glow. But as they moved closer, doubt crept back in. The light was thin and wavering, like a candle trying to hold its ground against a storm. "Do you think it's really safe?" Mark asked, his voice barely a whisper, the tremor unmistakable. Lisa shot him a look, searching for conviction. "It has to be better than whatever is lurking behind us." They stepped forward, edging toward the source. As they did, the room seemed to breathe, the walls shifting and closing in, the whispers intensifying, wrapping around them like icy tendrils. They glanced back, and the shadows swirled, almost as if they were coalescing into a formless mass brimming with malice. "Just keep moving," McCarthy urged, his tone sharp and commanding. But the shadows danced to their own rhythm, and each step felt like a race against time. The flickering light led them to a door at the far end of the dim room. It was heavy and ancient, the wood splintered and worn. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, McCarthy charged forward, his hands slamming against the surface. "Help me with this!" Lisa and Mark joined him, pushing against the door. It creaked ominously, as if protesting their escape. With a final heave, the door gave way, swinging open to reveal a narrow hallway cloaked in darkness. The force of the wind collided with their faces, icy and biting. They stepped over the threshold, heartbeats echoing in their ears. The darkness enveloped them again, but this time there was no malice, only silence and anticipation. The hallway stretched infinitely before them, dimly lit by sporadic, flickering lights above. "This feels wrong," Mark muttered, glancing back at the doorway they just left. It gaped open, a menacing maw that seemed to promise danger. "Better than staying there," Lisa said, though the chill in her bones didn't agree. She rubbed her arms, trying to shake off the feeling of being hunted. As they moved forward, the air thickened around them, saturated with a musty scent that clawed at their nostrils. Something whispered just out of reach, words curling around them like smoke, tangling with their thoughts. "Survive this night." The voice echoed in her mind, its tone sinister, worming its way into her consciousness. "Do you hear that?" McCarthy's voice broke the dreadful silence. What is it?" Lisa asked, her eyes widening. The shadows stacked up against the walls, hissing softly, almost like laughter, urging them onward. Yet every ounce of dread screamed for them to turn back. They pressed on, each step more weighted than the last, heavy with dread and uncertainty. Then they hit a wall, a dead end. It was solid, unyielding. No other doors or windows, just a smooth, cold surface that grounded their descent into despair. "Great," Mark said, panic crashing over him like a wave. "Now what?" Lisa's heart raced as she turned, searching for another way. That was when she saw the shimmering markings on the wall, symbols, ancient and weathered, pulsing with faint light. The shadows drew back, as if in fear. "What do you think they mean?" she whispered, mesmerized. McCarthy stepped closer, brushing his fingers over the carvings. The moment he did, a deep rumbling echoed through the hallway. It was a sound of awakening. "Get back," Lisa shouted, yanking him away, just as the air around them began to shimmer and distort. The walls quaked, and the whispers rose into a deafening crescendo. Something was coming. They stumbled back, eyes darting toward the darkness, fear etched on their faces as the shadows swelled, no longer mere tricks of light and form, but a tangible force. A hollow, echoing voice filled the corridor. "You have awoken what lies beneath." Lisa's breath hitched in her throat. "What does that even mean?" she shouted, panic rising. But the shadows didn't wait for an answer. They surged forward, shifting into forms that twisted and churned, a dark wave intent on consuming them. "We have to fight back," McCarthy yelled, raising the chair leg again. But already the shadows pushed in closer. As they braced for impact, Lisa felt a surge of desperation. "We need to find the truth before it finds us." What truth awaited them in this suffocating darkness? Could it be the key to their survival, or the death knell for them all? The shadows lunged, a writhing mass threatening to engulf them. Lisa's heart raced violently, the pounding echoing in her ears. She felt the chilling grasp of fear at her throat, tightening around her like a noose. In the frantic chaos, she caught a glimpse of Mark's face, a reflection of pure horror. "Back to the markings," McCarthy barked, determination lacing his words. They pivoted as one, scrambling toward the glowing symbols, their only hope. The air was thick with dread. Each step felt heavier, a weight pulling them down, as shadows pursued like hungry wolves. McCarthy's hands traced the ancient carvings, fingers trembling. With every touch, the symbols pulsed brighter, casting ripples of light against the engulfing darkness. "This has to mean something," he shouted over the tempest of whispers. "We need to unlock it." "Unlock what?" yelled, feeling frantic. "And how?" Maybe it's a form of protection," he said, desperation coloring his voice. "Think, what did it say?" "Survive this night," Mark echoed, clutching Lisa's arm, his grip turning painful. "What if that's the key?" The shadows thrummed, their anger palpable, an almost living entity eager to devour their fear. Lisa tried to concentrate, recalling each line of the glimmering symbols, their soft glow seeping into her skin, urging her to remember. Then, like a distant echo, she heard it again. "Survive." The word rolled through her mind like a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. "Maybe we have to shout it, call out to it." "Now?" McCarthy questioned, glancing back as the shadows twisted ominously, almost as if they were hesitating. "Yes, on 3." She felt a rush of adrenaline, a flicker of hope igniting. 1, 2, 3. "Survive this night," they cried as one, the words vibrating through the air, a challenge thrown into the abyss. The shadows roared with displeasure, surging toward them in a dark wave. But then the symbols flared, light cascading around them like a shield. For a moment, they could see the shapes within the darkness writhe and blink as the ancient glow held the shadows at bay, if only for an instant. "Keep calling," McCarthy urged, pushing harder against the wall, hands shaking. "It's working." "Survive this night," they shouted again, voices strong despite the fear gripping their insides. The shadows recoiled, howling in confusion as the light pulsated with their cries. But just as hope flickered, shadows melded together, forming into a grotesque figure that loomed closer. It was humanoid, yet distorted, eyes like voids in its dark face. "Fools," it bellowed, voice echoing like thunder. "You think your cries will save you?" The shadows closed in tighter, the air growing colder, but fear melted away, leaving only sheer resolve. "We're not afraid of you," Lisa shouted, her voice steadying. "Do you think power comes from your voices?" it sneered, mocking her bravery as it inched closer, darkness crawling at its feet. "You have disturbed the balance. Few escape that which is awakened." "What do you want?" Mark spat, fury bathed in terror. "Leave us alone." "Want?" The figure leaned in, its breath a chilling breeze. "Oh, I want far more than a mere meal. I crave submission." "Never!" Lisa screamed, adrenaline surging. "We're stronger than you think." The shadows writhed in anger, diminishing momentarily, as if considering her words. The pulse of the markings flickered, keeping the mass momentarily at bay. But how long until the light faded? Another crack of darkness echoed, vibrant with malice. The whispers grew into a tumult of rage and despair, and yet only one thought pulled at Lisa like an anchor. What if survival was the only way to survive this night? The chilling realization gripped her, a cold sweat forming on the back of her neck. Was there a way to tap into the darkness? To use it against itself? As McCarthy shouted for one last push, the shadows surged forward, a tide of dread. They pushed against the wall of pulsating light, the figures from beyond still looming, watching, waiting for the moment when their light would finally fail. What choice would they make when the truth emerged hidden in the dark? The shadows surged forward, an all-consuming black tide. Lisa squeezed Mark's hand, the warmth fading quickly under the cold fist of fear. McCarthy's frantic shouts echoed in the oppressive air, urging them on, but doubt gnawed at her resolve. They were trapped in a nightmare, surrounded by forces they didn't understand. Sweat ran down her back, just above the churning pit of terror in her stomach. "Keep it together," McCarthy yelled, desperately tracing the symbols. The faded carvings pulsed under his touch, pushing out waves of light that flickered like a candle at the edge of a storm. "It's our only chance." Mark's breathing grew shallower. What if it's not enough? What if the dark takes us first? His voice trembled, fear thick in the air. "It can't end like this," Lisa shouted back, trying to inject bravado that felt fragile. "We're stronger together. We have to believe." The grotesque figure loomed closer, shadows still writhing around it. It recoiled slightly at their combined cries, but quickly regained its menacing stance. "Your strength is nothing. The darkness will claim you," it shrieked, laughter ripping through the air, chilling Lisa to the bone. "Survive this night!" they bellowed again, the words now a desperate mantra. The ground beneath them shook, the carved symbols glowing brighter with their chorus. "Again! Shout it!" McCarthy urged, pain and determination mingled in his voice. As they screamed into the void, the ground quaked further, a fissure opened beneath their feet. The symbols dimmed, and shadows clawed at the edges of their makeshift sanctuary. "Mark, don't look down," Lisa warned. He tightened his grip, fear reflecting in his eyes. But in that moment, Lisa felt something shift. A pulse, a heartbeat, resonated with her own. The shadows screamed as if in pain, retreating momentarily. "Listen, it's alive!" she gasped, her voice shaking. "Alive? What do you mean?" Mark turned to her, confusion flickering behind her terror. "Draw from it," McCarthy shouted. "The markings, there's more to them. It's a bond, a connection." The shadows swelled, a grotesque snarl forming in the darkness. "You think you can commune? This is a curse, not a blessing. You are unwelcome." Then she'd had enough. "No, we're here to fight. We won't be prey," Lisa shouted. The immense figure fell back slightly, shadows swirling as it screamed in frustration. "Do you crave the ruin of your souls?" it thundered, voice cracking and reverberating off the walls. "You will know despair before this night is over." Wind whipped around them, biting and sharp. McCarthy pressed a shaking finger against the cymbals. "It's a puzzle we need to solve." The ground trembled as the shadows writhed, but Lisa couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something deeper was at play, something more sinister. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Tell us what to do. If you want us, let's make a deal." The figure paused, curiosity glinting in its darkened eyes. "A deal? You would barter with the void?" "Yes, we'll agree to your terms. Just tell us how to survive," Mark shouted, desperation edging his voice. The shadows hesitated, writhing like snakes. For the first time, they felt like they had actually gained ground. But was it a trick? Lisa's instinct screamed at her to run as the dark entity leaned even closer, a horrible smile inching across its ugly face. "Then let the games begin." Suddenly, the light pulsed more fiercely, too bright to bear. The shadows recoiled, but something twisted deep in Lisa's gut. What had she just unleashed? And would their decision ultimately lead to their downfall? As darkness swelled around them again, she realized this was just the beginning. Would they have the strength to face the truth waiting in the hidden depth of the void? The world shifted as the shadows closed in, a swirling vortex of darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. The grotesque figure towered above, its laughter echoing in their ears like the clang of a death knell. Lisa's heart raced as she felt the sweat drenching her clothes. The cold seeped into her bones, chilling her resolve. "Focus!" McCarthy shouted, rallying them, as if his voice could stave off the suffocating fear. "We need to hold our ground. What do we know?" Mark's eyes darted wildly, the panic evident in his wide-open stare. "We know nothing. It's too much." "Then let's find out," Lisa said, refusing to back down. She lifted her chin, pushing against the sensation of dread crawling along her skin. "Tell us what we have to do." The figure leaned closer, its grotesque features contorting with mockery. "You want knowledge. It will cost you dearly," it hissed, the words dripping with malice. "What are you willing to sacrifice?" Lisa's stomach knotted. What could they lose now that they hadn't already? The shadows pressed, shoulder to shoulder, vibrating with anticipation. "What if we—" McCarthy began, but Lisa cut him off. "No, we won't trade our souls. There's gotta be a way out that doesn't involve giving in." The entity's laughter tore through her, raw and rancid. "You misunderstand the game. Every choice comes with a price. Your fear already binds you to me." Heaving breaths mixed with the rumbling of the ground. The symbols began to fade, the light pulling back like an injured animal. "Lisa," Mark's voice cracked, "it's falling apart." "Then hold on to whatever is left," she shouted, eyes locked onto the swirling shadows. "We can't break. We can't." The faint heartbeat she had felt earlier surged again, thrumming like a war drum in her chest. She could feel its energy, more powerful than before, flooding her with
"Mark, McCarthy, it's in the symbols!" she cried. "We have to connect with the energy, bind ourselves to it." Mark shook his head, breath hitching in panic. "But what if it consumes us? If we don't try, we're dead anyway." The tension crackled around them. McCarthy's brow furrowed, but Lisa's gaze pierced through the shadows, her resolve igniting a spark within her. "Wait!" McCarthy's fingers trembled over the markings, his breath catching. "What if we blend our voices? Make a harmonic resonance? It might disrupt it." "Let's do it!" Lisa shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. They formed a triangle, breaths sinking, hearts pounding. "On 3, she instructed. "We can do this, together. 1, 2, 3. They shouted in unison, voices melding into a crescendo, the air crackling with power. The shadows recoiled, a raw scream emanating from the figure, as if being physically assaulted. The ground shook violently beneath them, and Lisa twisted her hands, trying to guide the energy towards the entity. Then something shifted. The symbols glowed fiercely, and the shadows surged back to confront the intensity of their connection. The figure staggered, the borders of its shape wavering like a mirage. "Fools!" it bellowed. But Lisa didn't waver. "It's hurting!" Mark shouted, voice rising above the chaos. "No, it's shifting!" McCarthy corrected, pointing at the way the shadows flickered, revealing an almost human-like outline beneath. As the combined light pushed back harder, the darkness roared, colors blurring into one another. The figure groaned, and as the light surged, Lisa could just make out letters and symbols and words forming beneath the shadows. "What is happening?" "Can you see it?" Mark whispered, but the terror in his voice hinted that he might not want to know. A final tide of blackness surged, crashing over them in a ferocious wave. The screams of the shadows merged with the roar of the world collapsing around them. Amidst the chaos, Lisa's thoughts spiraled. What if this was just a dreadful beginning, a deeper darkness unfurling, one that had lain in wait far longer than they could imagine? As their voices rose for the last time, it felt like surrender, an acceptance that darkness was about to reclaim them. But in that moment of despair, a whisper grazed her ear, soft yet chilling. "You have touched the essence. Now the true game shows its face." The ground beneath them cracked open wide. As they fell into the depths below, darkness swallowed the remnants of their screams. What awaited in that all-consuming void? The stage was set for a revelation more horrific than any of them could comprehend, but they had already entered the abyss. Lisa gasped, her breath catching as she landed in a soft, cold surface. Darkness enveloped her, but it felt different now. It was thick, almost tangible, but also dizzyingly vast. Flashes of light sparked all around, like stars flickering in open space. "Mark! McCarthy!" she shouted into the void, heart pounding in fear. The silence swallowed her words. Suddenly, she heard rustling. "Over here," McCarthy's voice echoed, and Lisa felt relief flood through her. She stumbled toward the sound, her hands brushing against something hard and rough. "Is everyone okay?" Mark's voice broke, filled with uncertainty. "I think so. But what is this place?" McCarthy said, scanning the haze of shadows surrounding them. Lisa turned slowly, trying to clear her vision. As her sight adjusted, she took in their surroundings. Endless walls of pulsating shadows lined with strange symbols. The air pulsed as if it belonged to a living creature, beating with rhythm, demanding attention. "What have we awakened?" Lisa whispered, a shiver running down her spine. McCarthy motioned toward the symbols. It's like we've entered a place of power, a confluence of darkness, And light, perhaps. But how do we get out? Mark asked, the dread sinking back in his voice. Lisa felt a surge of determination. These markings, they felt alive. If we can unlock whatever power they have, maybe it can help us. As they huddled closer, the figures pulsed with energy, responding to their presence. Shadows danced at the edges of the light, their whispers a chorus of forgotten truths, beckoning to be heard. "Remember when we shouted to survive this night?" Lisa recalled, feeling the pulse of the symbols sink with her heart. "Maybe we need to do that again, but more deliberately." "Deliberately how?" McCarthy questioned, eyeing the swirling darkness. "What if we harness that fear we felt?" Lisa suggested, an idea taking root. "What if we name what we fear most and transform it into strength?" Mark looked hesitant but nodded slowly. "It might work. We've handled so much already. What's a little honesty among friends?" Focusing, Lisa took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll go first. I fear losing my daughter forever." As the words escaped her lips, the symbols brightened, illuminating the shadows. The air grew electric, filled with vitality. A wave of warmth enveloped her, a bitter sweetness against the chill. The darkness recoiled as if stung. "Now it's our turn," McCarthy said, his voice strong despite the uncertainty coating it. "I fear being consumed by this darkness." Again, a crack formed in the haunting aura, a moment of clarity amidst chaos. It gave them strength. "Me too," Mark shouted, gripping their hands. "I fear being powerless in a world that needs me." Every word stitched together a fabric of their shared vulnerabilities, binding them as echoes of their fears formed a shield around them. The shadows shifted, almost curiously. "Keep going," Lisa coaxed. "Breathe life into the truths we've buried." "I fear being forgotten," McCarthy pushed, his expression resolute. "Lost to history, a fleeting ghost." The symbols roared brighter, casting out tendrils of light that reached into the darkness, swirling and morphing into brilliant patterns. "Fear is not a weakness," Lisa urged, stepping forward. "It connects us. It gives us power." As they continued, the shadows shrieked, swirling wildly, as if protesting their very existence. The energy surged, amplifying with every truth revealed. Their fears turned into stepping stones. With a final push, they cried out together, "We will not be defeated!" The chilling passion shattered the constraints of the dark figure looming nearby. A blinding flash erupted, and the pulsating brightness swallowed the silhouettes, eclipsing them entirely. In that moment, it became clear. The shadows weren't just monsters. They were fragmented pieces of fear and isolation, transformed into raw energy by the courage to confront them. Light broke through, pouring into the darkness as the void twisted and contorted. "You have faced me and triumphed," a voice echoed, resonating through the fissures of shadows. "But know this, darkness is not an enemy. It is a reflection of your strength." Lisa's heart raced as the remnants of the entity dwindled into nothing. She turned to McCarthy and Mark. "We did it! We chose to confront it, together!" With just a lingering pulse of energy, the symbols began to dissolve back into the fabric of reality, pulling them gently upward until light surrounded them. As the familiar howling wind of the Arctic kissed her cheeks, Lisa opened her eyes to see the shimmering light of dawn cresting over the horizon. The storm was gone, leaving a soft blanket of snow glistening in the morning sun. "Are we back?" Mark murmured, disbelief lacing his tone as he brushed the frost from his jacket. McCarthy slowly smiled, a newfound glint in his eyes. "Yes, but we are forever changed." Taking a deep breath, Lisa closed her eyes, the warmth of the sun wrapping around her. We faced our fears, and by doing so, we found pieces of ourselves we didn't even know were lost. They stood together, united in this remote outpost, the weight of the past behind them. And as the first rays of dawn illuminated the horizon, they knew one thing for sure: they would never be alone again. As they shared relieved laughter that quickly turned into hugs, something deeper flourished within them, a bond forged in darkness. They had embraced their fears and emerged alive, ready to face whatever came next. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.